What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. So it looks like there's some Golden Boy updates. Nothing is set in stone, nothing is concrete. However, I'm going to give you guys some updates on some potential fights that are likely to happen. Again, not set in stone, but most likely, and they're close to inking these deals. And I'm really liking what I'm hearing. So as far as Golden Boy, um, they've had a good year of boxing. I think earlier in the year, the first quarter, Top Rank had some of the better matches. Brandon Rios versus Mike Alvarado, Part 2. Um, Timothy Bradley versus Ruslan Provodnikov, which is, I think, leading for Fight of the Year, in my opinion. I think that's the number one fight, the fight to beat for the remainder of the year. Um, However, there's been a shift in the pendulum with the recent Golden Boy action. We've seen a lot of good fights. Danny Garcia versus Zab Judah, Lucas Matisse versus Lamont Peterson, Mayweather versus Guerrero, which was Mayweather Promotions and Golden Boy, Austin Trout, and Canelo Saul Alvarez. So Golden Boy's been doing their thing. I'm liking the matchups, and it looks like we're gearing up for some more. So in Golden Boy news, they are really close to the negotiations and the signing of Danny Garcia versus Lucas Matisse. And I cannot tell you how much of a fan I am for this particular fight. I was a fan of the Lamont Peterson fight with Lucas Matisse, and I think I like this matchup better. Even though I was really, I respect Lamont Peterson. I know he doesn't have the biggest punch, so it would be realistically, if he were to have beaten Matisse, it'd be from his defense and outboxing Matisse. I didn't expect that he could stop Matisse, and we all know how that fight played out. Matisse knocked him out early, and it was pretty much a wrap. But Danny Garcia versus Lucas Matisse, this is a more interesting fight. You have someone like Lucas Matisse, who is a silent killer, very patient. He's been patient in and out of the ring. He's been patient waiting for opportunities. He's been taking on awkward people like Humberto Soto, who's a veteran, people like Lucigan and Jose that nobody wanted to fight, who had an interim belt. Um, he was going to take on Hank Lundy, and Hank Lundy had to pull out due to management issues. He took on Mike Dallas, then he took on Lamont Peterson. I mean, this guy is really game for anything. I think he just wants to respect more or less in the sport of boxing. And then you have Danny Garcia, who has constantly been the underdog. People say he has like wide club looping punches, and Zab Judah, based on his style, was supposed to tear Danny Garcia up. And it was a competitive fight. However, Danny Garcia did enough early um, to win that fight convincingly, in my opinion. Eric Morales, that was his first big title shot, and he did his thing against a seasoned veteran like Eric Morales. And in the rematch, because Morales had a rematch clause, I mean, he easily got Morales out of there. And Morales was on some type of diuretic or whatever. Amir Khan was supposed to beat him and move to 147. He foiled Amir Khan's plan. So both guys have been yearning for respect from the boxing community. I would say Danny Garcia, as of recently, has been getting maybe more respect in the boxing world. Um, that's really hard to say. I would say by the masses. I would say Danny Garcia is more popular just because he's been seen more. He's been at headlining at the Barclays and that kind of thing. Diehard boxing fans really respect Lucas Matisse. I respect both fighters. Both fighters are arguably undefeated. Danny Garcia is undefeated in his professional career, and Lucas Matisse, a lot of people think he should be undefeated. They think he beat Zab Judah and he beat Devin Alexander. I gotta watch the Zab fight again. I know it was a close fight and he had a slow start, but he picked it up towards the end and he knocked Judah down. But I think Zab Judah might have done enough to win. I really have to watch that fight again, but I think he definitely beat Devin Alexander, and he was kind of robbed in that decision. So Danny Garcia versus Lucas Matisse. I'm not even going to bother making a prediction this early. I want to see this fight set in stone, and I'd really have to think about it. Who I think would win. On one hand, I can easily pick Lucas Matisse, saying, I mean, the power. I mean, this guy has destructive power. He's like a freight train. He's patient. He goes to the body, which is something that some power punchers don't do. So if he has power in both hands, and he's not headhunting, he's actually going to the body. that could be dangerous. But then you have Danny Garcia, and every time people write him off and say Zab's judo style's all wrong for him, Amir Khan's too lengthy and he's too fast for him, he keeps finding a way to win. And he did take some good shots against Zab Judah. Some may argue that Lucas Matisse was never in any real danger in the Zab Judah fight, the same way that Danny Garcia was in the later rounds, maybe 11 or 12. But again, styles make fights, and I don't think that's really fair to compare based on the fact that Judah fight took place and all the situation and the circumstances surrounding both fights. If you look at Lucas Matisse versus Zab Judah, one, Lucas Matisse was younger in his professional career, and the fight didn't take place at the Barclays. Two, I think the Danny Garcia that Zab Judah fought was in better shape. I think it was a more focused, sharp Zab Judah. So I think Danny Garcia actually faced the tougher Zab Judah. He was coming off of an impressive win against an undefeated fighter, Paris, and he fought at home at the Barclays, so he had the hometown crowd. And I just watched some interviews before the fight where Zab Judah was saying that he's been clean and sober for 4 years. He says becoming a boxer early, he got kind of into the party life and he was out drinking and he'd be staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning partying, and he had to weigh in the next day or he had to fight the next day. And he was basically doing whatever he did, whether he won or lost, and looking good and knocking dudes out based on pure natural skill and athleticism, and wasn't really taking the training serious. But he said he's been sober for 4 years, and Zab Judah, it showed. He looked really focused, even when he was hurt and knocked down. He fought like a veteran. So I honestly think Danny Garcia fought the better Zab, a more focused Zab, and a Zab with a lot to lose, because at that particular point, if Danny Garcia just blew through him and knocked him out, everybody would write Zab Judah off entirely. Now they're talking about Zab Judah possibly fighting Mike Alvarado. Zab Judah is not signed to Golden Boy. I think he's Judah Promotions or something like that, but he has a working relationship with Golden Boy. But he's not actually signed to them. He's more or less a free agent, Zab Judah Promotions or whatever it's called. And they're talking about Mike Alvarado fight, even though Alvarado is with Top Rank, that fight could possibly happen. And I don't think Zab Judah would have a possibility to have a fight like that if Danny Garcia went through him. But he held his own, even though he lost. He looked sharp in doing so, and he looked very composed even when he was hurt. And he rallied for a comeback late. So again, I think Danny Garcia fought the sharper Zab Judah. Overall, mentally, spiritually, hometown advantage, etc. So Danny Garcia versus Lucas Matisse, I wouldn't really compare what happens in that fight based on their showings against Zab Judah. But I really like the matchup. There's nothing else I could say about it. There's nothing that I don't like. So I'll make a prediction once it's signed. In other boxing news, Abner Mars versus Johnny Gonzalez. They are looking to make that. And they're trying to have Leo Santa Cruz on the undercard fighting Victor Terrazas. And I like that. And they're talking about having that fight in Mexico. I think that's big for the sport. We've seen a lot more fights taking place outside of the U.S. Obviously, Abner Mars has a built-in fan base. Leo Santa Cruz is an up-and-comer. He has an exciting style. His body shots are lethal. Victor Terrazas is a good fighter as well. And so is Johnny Gonzalez. It's kind of weird how boxing has been playing out lately. We have fighters like Abner Mars who just beat the guy that beat Johnny Gonzalez. So Abner Mars beat Daniel Ponce de Leon by stoppage on the Mayweather-Guerrero undercard. And Ponce de Leon was the guy that beat Johnny Gonzalez. Now, you could argue just because it was a technical decision, because I think it was a headbutt or a bad cut or something. But still, Ponce de Leon beat Johnny Gonzalez, and now he's fighting, or scheduled to fight, I guess you could say, the guy. He beat the guy who got the title from the guy he's fighting next. And we've seen that again happen with Mikey Garcia recently. Mikey Garcia beat Orlando Salido first, and then he just beat Juanma Lopez. So Juanma Lopez, as you guys know, he lost 2 times to Orlando Salido. So it seems a little bit backwards, a little bit Benjamin Button, if you will, that certain fights are being made, and the second fight is against the person who lost to the first fighter they beat. I just find that kind of ironic. But either way, I mean, styles make fights, and you can't take anything away from a Johnny Gonzalez or a Juanma Lopez. I mean, I think Juanma Lopez is done now, but I mean, you can't say that he can't get a fight because he lost to Orlando Salido twice. I really like those fights. Again, Leo Santa Cruz, I did a previous video on that, so check the video responses. I really like Leo Santa Cruz. He seems very humble, very family-oriented, like he's boxing not only for himself but for his family. He has a sick brother. Showtime did a promo special on him. Make sure you check that out on YouTube. I'm a fan of Abner Mares, too. Initially, I wasn't so much an Abner Mares fan, but he's growing on me. And the reason I wasn't is because he has a stigma of fighting dirty. The Becco fight was probably the most famous, but he still finds a way to win, and he's game, and he's willing to fight anyone. Recently, he said he's willing to fight Nonito, Rigondeaux, Mikey Garcia, Gary Russell Jr. I mean, this kid is game, so it's like you can't help but respect that. If you're a true boxing fan, you can't help but respect his warrior spirit. So Abner Mares, I really like Abner Mares now. Again, initially I was a little bit apprehensive because I thought he was dirtier, but even in the Ponce de Leon fight, I mean, he was in there with the bigger guy, and I don't really remember anything that he did that was dirty, so he definitely moved up in weight and earned that. He didn't have any low blows. If anything, I think Ponce de Leon had a couple warnings. He might have had a few warnings now that I think about it, Abner Mares, but either way, it was a legitimate win, and the kid wants to fight. He likes to scrap, and he's game. So those are just some updates with Golden Boy, potential fights. The last one would be Shane Mosley versus Victor Ortiz. Out of all the fights I mentioned today, that's probably the fight I like the least. I think Shane Mosley is past his best. I'm a huge Shane Mosley fan career-wise, but we all know he hasn't looked great or exceptional in his last fights. I still haven't seen the fight with Pablo Cesar Cano, but it went to the cards, whereas I think Shane Mosley in his prime would have ran through Cano and probably stopped him. I just don't see Shane Mosley having the ability to pull the trigger the same as he once did. I think he's been through too many wars. Doesn't really have the style like a Juan Manuel Marquez or Floyd Mayweather or Bernard Hopkins. I don't think he has the style for longevity. He has a style that suits him in his prime, like when he's athletic and when he's younger. I just don't see it. So Victor Ortiz, it's kind of like if he does fight Shane Mosley, it's like if Victor Ortiz beats him, okay, he beat a 41-year-old, 42-year-old Shane Mosley. It's like a cool name to put on your resume, but it doesn't really say much to Victor Ortiz. I wouldn't say if he beat Shane Mosley, he deserves a Mayweather rematch. I think he has more to prove. Personally, I like Robert Guerrero versus Victor Ortiz a lot more than Shane Mosley versus Victor Ortiz. So that's my personal taste. Let me know what you guys think of these Golden Boy potential fight updates. That's really all I got to say. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off. So I give props to Danny Garcia. Whether you think he has the most technical style or not, he's still finding a way to win. I've said this for a long time. Lucas Matisse, he's a monster. His body shots are vicious. I think one of the best displays of his vicious body shots would be the Eric Morale fight. That's one of the things I really like about this kid. He seems very tough.